Are we blue?
We are blue.
Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are you ready? You got it? All right. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, we don't have any signed in visitors? We do?
Just make sure
We're good?
we're good.
Thank you. Let's move on to discussion items. Discussion item A, the school data review with Mrs. Goodson.
Hello. So each spring we're required by state statute to run engagement surveys for staff, parents, and students grades 3 through 12. So we've got a summary of the results here. One of the differences that the state allowed this year was that we could develop our own local education, our local districts could create our own surveys. And so that gave us a lot more flexibility in what we were able to ask. And get some questions that we could get some actionable data on. So that was a nice benefit. Each one of our reports, our surveys, we've got what is called a Net Promoter Score. And this score is designed to tell us how likely are you to recommend this school, this district to a friend or to a colleague. And the way that it's scored is if people select a 9 or a 10, they're viewed as a promoter. And passive is 7 to 8, and a detractor is 0 to 6. So the way that is calculated is you take your percent of promoters minus your percent of detractors, and then you get your net promoter score. Anything that is positive is felt to be good. Anything that is above 40 is considered to be excellent. So this is an extremely high standard that we set for ourselves and for the district, where you would think that like 7 is average, for example. We don't just want to be average, we want to be excellent. So that's where these numbers come from. So you'll see 1 on each survey. So if we will go through the first survey, is this one the parent, remind me? The parent one? Yep. And this survey, as we looked through some of the questions, had a strong alignment to goal 4 of our strategic plan, particularly with our school community and getting the feedback from them. We've got an NPS, or a Net Promoter Score, of 21.46. So that's exciting because it is in that positive range for us. It is a district-wide calculation, so they could answer for any school that their child was from. When you look at the results in this area, overall, they're really pretty positive from the parent aspect, and specifically on goal 4 of the strategic plan. Something I wanted to point out was that it says we want to ensure a welcoming and responsive environment at each school for parents and families. And so some of those questions on there that related to, are you getting timely communications from the buildings? That's one indicator that we can utilize as part of seeing where we're at with the strategic plan. Are there questions on the parent one? Okay, let's go to the staff one.
I do, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Cindy.
Of the 1,200 plus responses, do you know how the breakdown was from what schools they came from?
We can pull that, yes.
I'm just curious because you've got high school, middle, the academy, you've got 3 elementaries.
Yep.
It'd be really interesting to see where we're getting, not all of them equaled up to be answering the whole thing, every
No,
question.
They didn't, correct. They could skip questions if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But we did have them answer a question of which school they were.
Yes.
So we can look at
So we
that.
can,
any of those questions within those surveys, you can filter the results. So if you wanted to say, we want everybody who marked a 10, or we want everyone who marked a 6, and we want to see how they voted on everything, you can filter on any of those questions.
Well,
So if
just
there are
kind
a
of-
list of those, we can get that for you as a board.
It'd just be interesting to see if the majority came from the high school
Right.
or it was spread out over pretty,
Yep.
an average, which I doubt it will be, but.
Of course, the elementary schools are always in a position where they're competitive with the other schools, right? It's-
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as creating the reports, we wanted to create it from that holistic perspective of, this is all of us as a district working towards this. But when we start, each principal will get their own report for how parents, students, faculty responded from their
So they'll,
schools.
they'll
Yeah.
see.
They'll
what
see that.
happens. You said too that the state let the questions be created by the district.
Yeah.
Was that somebody from every school? Was it a administration thing? Were there teachers involved? Were there
We
parents?
took a look at this is one of the first surveys that we've ran with Qualtrics. And so we took information from them about other schools across the nation and what type of engagement surveys that they gave out. And then we selected questions that we felt would fit our district best.
Okay. I know I had something else on my brain. On the staff one, just look, it says staff engagement, but then it says in the italic part, parent. I don't know if you're gonna give this out to anybody else but us, but
No, we'll make that correction. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yep.
on the staff part too, sorry, I'm going ahead.
Yeah.
You're good.
Was it just teachers?
It was all staff. Yep. All staff. not
All
just
staff,
teachers. Yeah.
not like custodians or
Yes.
anybody else?
It could have
Custodians could
All of
have.
our classified and our certified, yeah.
All right.
So then on that staff report, see, you're just a really good segue to me. Again, we've got that net promoter score, and this one is at 36.45, which is extremely high.
Hi.
And for me personally, it's extremely rewarding knowing what we've gone through in the past several years to know that this is how our staff feels about our district. It directly relates back to goal 2 of the strategic plan, which is to attract, develop, and retain quality staff. So when we go through this, there's just a lot to celebrate in this one. I will say one of the areas that came up maybe weaker in the survey is question 5. Our school and department regularly celebrates our successes. So that's something that we can focus on and be very intentional about moving forward.
So that's one of the things, sorry to interrupt, that you're looking at, not just as a holistic score, yay, we got above, but within that, there's some things that we can work on. I mean, there's not huge numbers that are frustrated or complaining with the staff, but they still stand for something, right? Somebody's having a frustrating time, and so we either find out what that is that's causing that and fix it, or we figure out if it's us or them, right?
Yeah, I was a little concerned about the neither agree or not agree. There tended, on some of them, tended to be a lot there, some not, but the questions that are asked are pretty much either yes or no kind of thing.
I think it's the variance to which they would agree or not. And sometimes they do land right
In the middle?
smack dab in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions on the staff one? Okay, let's head to the secondary student one. So we gave 2 different surveys, one to elementary and one to secondary, because we had to frame the questions in a more age appropriate manner. So that's why we've got 2 different ones here. So what you'll see on the secondary one is a net promoter score that is not above 0. It's a negative 29. And so that gives us something to dive into. When we look at the survey, one of the, it's question 8. that ranks as part of the lowest, which is students in my school respect one another. And Mark and I have had discussions about this question, and we can view it a couple of different ways. Did we read the question one way? Is it the question, or is there an issue within our schools? And in looking at, because you'll see it on the elementary end as well, specifically with this question, was it viewed the same way by students?
What are the alternative ways that you feel that could have been viewed?
I'll give one example. On the secondary side, let's say students in my school respect one another. If a student was looking at that and said there was, let's say there's a group of students who are generally disrespectful to teachers or to other classmates or whatever. They look at that, you might have 1,200 students that are all generally respectful, but you've got a group that are not. So, but everybody sees those students who are not. And so because there's that smaller group that are not respectful, they could be. And this is where I want to make sure that we're not trying to look for excuses.
Oh, yeah.
But we do want to make sure that we're addressing the problem as carefully as we can. But that would be one possible way. It could be just a general feeling that, you know, you walk down the hallways and I hear this and I hear that and I hear that. It maybe never, it's not directed at me, but I see it directed at other people.
Okay.
I think it's the kind of, the response was significantly different from the rest of the survey enough that it's one we'll absolutely be diving in on with the principals as we set. One of the things and the steps that will be taken from my perspective is as I sit down and work with the principals as they're creating their goals for the coming year. We're going to be using some of this data to guide some of that, because some of it's going to require some investigation. Maybe they know what it is already and they can take steps to fix it. Maybe it's trying to identify, maybe it's never been really put out that way, that students don't feel that other students respect one another. And if that's the case, how are we going to move forward in making that?
I mean, if I'm reading it, it would look to me like, I mean, I've got detractors of, almost over 1,000. Basically, at this point, saying, I feel bullied, I feel uncomfortable, there's
Yeah,
something
I
here that
don't
doesn't make me
feel
feel
like I have a,
included.
yeah, could be our
and-
polarized world we live in
It
too.
could be.
I mean, they're older
I mean, we
kids.
just need, but that's, you know, if it's
Not that
I feel
would
this way, they
dismiss
feel
it.
that way, and I don't like that. Well, cool, we need to learn how to work together. If it's, I feel like, you know, people are actively bullying me or something, or other people around me, cool, let's get a
Civility
handle on it.
101.
Right?
There you go,
So,
Paige. Civility 101.
Well, and for me, this particular answer doesn't mean much unless we have a baseline to compare it from. Because for all I know, every student feels like every other student is disrespectful. I don't know
Yeah,
what is
that's
a
true.
statistic.
What are their expectations of
Yeah.
Comparison, you know, for all we know, this is a great response compared to any other school or any other situation. So I don't know, do you have any baseline responses to
Yeah.
compare it to?
Not on this one.
Okay.
This one,
That's what I would,
yeah.
go ahead.
And for us, we are creating some baselines here. We're creating something that we can measure, you know, steps that we take this year and see if it makes a measurable difference in how the students are looking at it in the coming year.
So it's because the district wrote their own questions, we don't have any, is there anything that the state put out that could give you a little bit of info? Or it would be totally,
Previous state surveys and see exactly what the.
I'm just curious, because that was my one question
Yeah.
too, was.
And this gets you somewhere to dig in, right? I mean, you can now center something around what are some of the things, issues that you feel are impacting respect,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and towards the last, like 9, 10, 11, all of them, all the way to 17, there were only 1,400 and some kiddos that even did the survey out of the 1622. So it's kind of, I agree with delving into this.
Yeah.
Why would somebody not take this? I mean, principle wise, I'd be looking at that. And did Johnny or our new principal have any idea or?
He's just seeing this now as well.
Oh,
So we're just getting all this data
Okay.
now, so we'll.
Yeah,
I think
it
so.
is good information.
I will say they carve out the time, we can provide the survey, we can provide the link to the survey. But we don't necessarily make check boxes about this kid did this survey
So what do you mean by you carve out the time?
We give them time during class.
during class.
So
To be
it's
able to
during a
take it.
certain class
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
time of day and,
It depends on the school and
It
their
does.
grade level.
Yeah.
They may say, okay, all English teachers, we want you to take 15
Oh.
minutes and allow those students to do this.
okay.
It might just be right before, like the middle school has an advisory type period. They would do it during that time.
So some will just sit there and not do it
Possibly.
and others are doing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions on the secondary one?
Can we break that down as to how many high school, academy and middle school? Please.
It's just about, I did look at that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's just about
It's just about
balance,
equal.
equal middle school,
Okay.
high school, and only about 15 of the alternative school students
Okay,
took it, so.
thank you.
Yeah, okay, on the elementary one, that net promoter score is sitting at 26.96. You'll see one of the changes that we made for the grades 3 through 5 was that we provided them 3 options, an agree, a neutral, and a disagree. And then we worded the questions in a way that was a lot more friendly for their developmental level. This is where, if you go to question 8, I think this is what caused us to really question the students in my school respect one another. Because when I got this, we went back to check the survey to make sure that we hadn't inadvertently left off an agree,
Mhm.
and there was an agree on there.
Wow.
Oh, there
So-
was.
So when you look between the elementary and the secondary and you see that it's drastically different than any other part of the survey, you do tend to question if it was a question in and of itself. But again, it gives us a lot of information to do.
I think, we're setting the environment and the culture at a younger age, so we fix it at the elementary school and they
Yes.
can carry it through. It's gonna be a lot easier than going to a bunch of juniors and seniors and going, hey, stop, respect everybody. Like,
Right.
you start
Just
building
roll
that
their
up a
eyes and
little
run
bit
away.
at the elementary school, then I think it will slowly start to juxtaposition on this.
Well, and even at that age too, a lot of those students don't even understand what the word respect.
Right.
That's what I was.
So, I mean, that question is very convoluted,
Well,
even at the secondary level.
Yeah.
Well, it's a
Well,
reason.
True.
I mean, they really don't truly understand.
You're true.
I'm just thinking about me in school going, click, click.
Yeah, exactly.
click.
So, I mean,
Yep, well, and what it does is it provides us an avenue to ask the right questions.
Yes.
And honestly, that's one of the things I'm excited about with the results of this, is that it gives us things that we can actively pursue that say, no, this isn't just kind of guessing, this is something we need to find out. We need to find out what kids think of, what does respect mean to them?
right.
Because what they think respect means may be different, very different. And you could maybe have 100 kids out there and have 100 different descriptions of what it means to be respectful.
So teachers, when they had them do this, did they give any type of intro into what it was that the survey was about, or?
Just that it was an engagement survey and that we were asking all students to participate, but we deliberately left it without any other explanation so that we could see how the students responded. So there wasn't an explanation, because otherwise we would have to go through and say, okay, so respect. When we say respect on this survey, what we want you to talk about is this.
Yeah.
Where we're giving it the first time, we wanted to really get a feel for where everybody was at so we could identify some of the issues as they ran through.
I'm not
I
knowing
think
what it is.
you can probably justify that particular piece because it seems to be the biggest issue just by saying, because I think you're gonna get parents as a sounding board. If kids are coming home going, school sucks because I'm getting, picked on, or there's a bunch of jerks there, whatever. If that's echoed in a parent's survey, that will give you some more information too. Then it's not just
Yeah.
kids like me who would have just been, clicking on buttons to get through it faster or
Right.
screwing off.
Half of them aren't gonna understand what it means anyway. Like if you start diving into it
Yeah, I
and
think you're
saying, okay, this is what this question means, this is what this questions mean, they lose it all and say, I'm not gonna even answer it. Or they'll just click.
Which,
I agree with exactly how you guys did it.
Yeah.
To start
No,
with.
I'm just was curious how
Yeah.
teachers presented it to them.
well, and that's where we'll be able to start narrowing that a little bit so that if we see here was a clear issue, we can have the teachers clear that up before they take it the next time.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's a great question too, and I think at the secondary level, I would assume most students understand, respect
oh,
and
yeah.
so
Maybe.
forth. Maybe.
Maybe.
At least if they
Maybe.
feel like other students are respecting them. But I think the question is intriguing because to a large extent, this may be something that is out of our control or out of our preview as an education situation where this is kind of where we are. These students come in culturally, either respecting or not respecting each other. I'm not sure how much the
Well-
school system can really deal with that. Maybe that's
Well, but we should set an expectation,
Right,
I think.
yeah, but we're on
Because
that
it would,
edge.
I think it would have a conflict with their learning at some point.
Oh, certainly.
It would definitely impact that, so.
It changes the environment and it becomes either more or less much difficult or less difficult for the teachers. But to some extent, that's their family environment that's creating that preconceived notion whether I'm going to respect or not respect another student.
No, you're right.
So it's a very.
But you can say, in the
interesting
classroom, this is what we do.
question. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I always,
It's at least how
and
I
maybe
feel.
it's changed, but most elementaries would talk about what character was, what respect was,
It's
what,
just socially
just-
emotional learning.
over the period of the school year.
And we do
And-
that. We have
Yeah, that's
that
what I
in all of our
thought.
schools as well.
Kind
So-
of conduct.
As far as
I don't know if
curriculum
it's-
goes,
I don't know.
what does this, is this, we're gonna try and delve a little more into how to communicate better, how to do this or that better, like at the kid level? Or are you looking at this holistically at an administrative level? Like where, or is it across the board?
I think when we examine the data, could there be curricular pieces that address respect? There could be. So some of it I think can go back to a curricular piece. Some could be the cultural piece that we
Mhm.
instill within our schools. Some could be the clarity of expectations, those different types of things. So as we dive deeper, it's okay, then what action steps are we gonna take and what resources do we need in order to make it better?
And as an example, you would see let's take that respect idea and let's say that we dive in and the principals have conversations with their teachers and the students and they find that what's driving some of this is just maybe it's the language that the students are using towards one another in the hallways during passing periods. Well, the principal can, or the teachers or a group of them together can look at that and say, okay, how do we then try to help that change? And the students will see it if there's let's just say, and I'm making this really simplistic, let's just say that the principals and teachers start cracking down on swearing in the hallways. And if that was somehow connected with how kids viewed respect, the fact that the principals and the teachers are making a concerted effort to stop that could be something that would have an effect on how the students view the respect of the school. But I think the students are going to take their cues based on what the teachers and the principals make as the expectation. If you say don't swear, but then nothing ever happens if you do swear, well, there's not going to be any change based on that. Same with fighting, same with cheating, whatever it is, if there's not some kind of response, then the students say, oh, well, that's not important to them. But if they see it as being something important, then maybe that starts to change that culture. And that really revolves around the ultimate responsibility in each of those schools is that principal to guide that culture and to make sure that the culture is one where kids can learn. And so that's really what we're trying to do with a lot of this, is create or tweak the culture in ways. If it's good in certain areas, we're going to tweak it. If it's bad in areas, we need to make some changes.
Were there any special ed students that were in the classrooms, or did they go into their classroom?
For the survey?
For the survey?
Each building facilitated their own
Okay.
survey.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's move on to discussion item B, the handbook approvals.
And there were just on the high school, before we go in too far, there were a couple of things that we needed to make some adjustments on from what was delivered to you. So in the high school, there were besides the addition of the bell schedule, which you have in your set there, there was a adjustment in there to the student parking, because the way they had written it was charging for a permit to park, and that was not something that we can have happen, and that just didn't get caught as we were putting that through. So they've changed the writing, the descriptors there, so that there's not a permit that is required of students. And that goes back to that lawsuit with West Ada in terms of student fees and things like that. So we just fixed that part. And then the other part was on the dress code, pages 14 and 15. A group of administrators and teachers at the high school were working on some changes to the dress code. But as we got further in, what you saw within the document, it just wasn't where we wanted it to be yet. And so what we've done is, what you have here is just what this dress code has been at the high school over the last several years. And so Mr. Hollinger is going to continue working on adjustments to the dress code that he would present for the handbook for the following year. But just so you're aware how those changes, because it was kind of a work in progress trying to make those corrections, but didn't feel like we could get where we needed to be with that in general. So not going away from making some adjustments to dress code, but felt like needed more input on it before we went forward.
So this one will be in there for this year.
So this, as it's listed in your handout here on the desk, is how the dress code and the parking policy would be listed for the coming school year. And if the board approves this tonight, we'll get these sections added in place of before we post it.
And we're okay with the $10 fine if they park in a senior's parking spot?
That's one of those that they're gonna have to work on themselves as they walk through it. But I think, honestly,
Good luck collecting that.
there's more natural consequences that will come that would
I think so.
keep a student from parking there than there would be
Yes.
from the fine, so.
Okay, any questions, any?
So are they going to enforce this
Yes.
dress code?
Yes, they'll be working on the enforcement, but one of the problems was there are pieces of that are a little bit more challenging to enforce than others. And so that was one of the aspects they were trying to adjust for. They just didn't feel like they quite had it tweaked right. And there were some things in the wording that would have got us in some legal issues had we left it the way that it is. So we felt like leaving it the way it is, they'll work on that more consistently, enforcement of the current dress code while they work on getting it
Change for the
following year.
Okay.
Any others? Good. All right, let's move on to discussion item C. update on progress with your superintendent goals.
Okay. I'll just walk through each of these goals. The student performance goals, English language arts. All students population will increase the number of proficient and advanced students in all grade levels by 5 percentage points as measured by the English language arts ISAT. So one of the things we've looked at, especially at our elementary level, is where we were coming in on some of those scores this year, both not just with the ISAT, but their iReady reading scores. And so each of the principals has been assigned to create some performance goals surrounding both English and math, and what they're planning to do for this coming year in regards to that. One of the things we'll be looking at is focusing on iReady, the scores that are coming in from iReady, and how a teacher can utilize those scores to analyze and make the adjustments, and what supports those teachers need to make those, whatever analysis there is. Sometimes it's just not lack of familiarity with how to actually analyze the scores, and sometimes it's just getting the time to do it. And so we'll be working with the instructional specialist to start identifying what's the easiest way for our teachers to be able to make those and the analysis, and then make the adjustments then. And so what we're trying to do is not wait for the benchmark testing before we start making the adjustments. As a teacher sees those issues coming up through their analysis of the daily, weekly work that the students are doing, being able to make those adjustments then, rather than let's wait and see what the iReady scores are in December. Let's make those changes in October if we are seeing those issues come up. And so we've been having those conversations as administrative staff on how we help our teachers get there. And that's going to be a focus this fall as we're going through. So that's how the primary thing that we'll be looking at with the student performance goals. Any questions on that one before I move on to the others?
Will there be things for teachers to look at prior to the school year starting with their new students?
Paige, can you speak to that?
As far as data is concerned,
Yeah, so they at least kind of know where to start versus waiting until the testing.
so we just rolled over Skyward from the summer session to the regular term. And so we're working now on rostering all of the curricular and assessment platforms to their rosters. That being said, in order to see the data and to see it, the rosters have to be present and the teacher has to be attached to a particular class in order for them to get that data. So that all has to be set up at the building level with when they're hired and when they're assigned to their particular courses.
So they'll have it before the school year starts, but it's like if they went in to look right now, not all of those teachers would have it because not all of the students have been assigned within Skyward yet.
Okay.
They might have the assignment outside of Skyward, but they don't have it within Skyward yet.
And for example, our brand new hires or our late hires, we still have to process all of their paperwork, get them in the system, get their rosters attached to them. So as quickly as we can, yes, they can see all of that information.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay, the next one, develop a focused track system for students to guide course selection towards specific careers. What we've done so far, here in the spring, we gathered the counselors and principals from the high school and middle school and started brainstorming how these different track systems might start looking, what some of them have seen in other schools, and essentially what we're able to do is, or what we're going to do is pull those counselors together and start generating the list. One of those things we need to do is generate the list of what are the careers and pathways that we want to be able to say we've got here's what would be the best thing for you if you're planning to go down this path. We've started a collaboration with CWI in regards to several of their CTE pathways, and we'll want to make sure we're keeping the CTE pathway, because that's an actual thing within CTE, and what we're talking about as pathways is a little bit different. But yeah, it was probably one of the best meetings that I'd had regarding education in a long time when we sat down, because there was a palpable excitement about what this could do for kids and parents. And so the first step, once we get through the first couple of weeks of school, will be to bring that group back and start identifying which tracks we would identify. And then it's going to be assigning different members of that team to start building out what that track looks like. And then another part of that I'll be doing is getting parent input, either by committees or reaching out through surveys and emails to ask for input. But what is it that they need, as a parent, to best guide their students as they're trying to go through? Because I think that's a link that we're missing quite a bit, is just being able to hit the parents where they need that. And with such a variety of experience levels as a parent. A parent who's maybe had 5 or 6 kids roll through the Middleton High School maybe has a better understanding than that parent who it's their first kid coming into high school.
Yes.
And so being able to try and get them on as much of a level playing field as possible, so that that new parent has just as good a chance as the parent who had experience. And so those are some of the things that we'll be pulling out. The goal is still to get that rolled out as we are heading into the registration time in the spring this coming year.
Are we going to be able to see some graphs of that?
Yes. And that's something that, as we're putting this report on the superintendent goals on a regular, every couple of months, I'll be coming and sharing how we're doing on each.
This is really cool. I think it's pretty innovative. I mean, I'm sure there's other places doing it, but if we can do it our way, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, I think we have the ability to prove a concept that really continues to take us, by guiding the interest of the kids and things like that. And I think part of the barrier to that's going to be talking to parents and helping them understand. We're not trying to pigeonhole your kid.
Right.
We're trying to give them options so that in like 20 years down the road, and I'd like to be, they at least have contextually an education path that they went through, so that, hey, I'm doing geometry because I want to be a contractor, or I want to do this. And I think there may be some parents that don't understand that, or there may be some kids that struggle. I mean, I think ninth grade I was going to be a hairdresser. Right? And then I was going to be a chef.
And then
I
it's
was
okay
like,
if you change
you know
your
what?
mind.
I'm a general contractor
right?
now, and now I have a software company. So it can veer, and I think we need those eventualities in there, so that it's like, well, if they shift, they still have all these credits built, and there's a program, there's a safety net. But all in all, at the end of this, our goal is to produce somebody that can leave our doors, not just passing tests, but I've got some skills. I've got a marketable thing that I've got in my hands that I can walk in and do something more than, the fries are done, let me flip it over, right?
Right.
Some people that will be them, but it's okay.
No, but I think it has the potential to make a big difference for a lot of kids. So, any other questions on that one? Next one, pretty quick. Just we have our construction teacher hired at the academy. High school students can come down and take those courses. Certified nurses, assistants in rehabilitation or sports medicine. We've got a teacher hired for that. So we had students with the sports medicine pathway who took some of the introductory classes through IDLA this last year, and are going to have a person to work through these next courses for them. So these are all, those are moving right along the way that we'd like them to. We have started sketching out what would need to happen for auto mechanics and computer science the following year. So we're still moving in that direction. We don't have anything firm yet. And then following, we will be looking at apprenticeships in cabinetry and educational assistance by second semester of this
Where's
year.
the cabinetry stuff at?
We haven't, I don't want to say anything in
Oh, okay.
public setting because the folks we've talked with haven't committed to anything yet. So, but
Nice new $54 million building on the other side of Star that's pretty impressive looking. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
right. But there are two, we've actually had two different cabinetry companies reach out and say that they're interested in pursuing it with us. So we'll keep moving along. And like I said, as soon as we can get those up and running, we can get our kids in there. Educational assistance, it would be for the second semester. We'd be ideally putting that in place.
It's a great idea.
And then I'll just for the fourth goal, we have not done a lot of concrete things beyond having conversations with the administration, letting them know that that's something that we'll be working on. So, any questions, concerns with how we're pursuing those?
Nope. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on to discussion item D, security plan RFP presentation.
All right, so there are two different documents that you saw there. The primary change, the RFP hasn't changed too much, except that it changes the wording in there to allow us to make the decision based on things other than
Money.
total cost. Total cost still needs to be a part of that, but the language of the request for proposal, and we still call it, I had made the mistake of saying that was a request for qualifications last meeting. It's still legally called a request for proposal, but it's done under the Idaho code that's listed in that first section summary, 67-2806A. And when you do it based on that code, it allows you to use things other than just cost. And so that's what that will come to then is you as a board looking at what's up on the screen there, the scoring rubric for request for proposals. Essentially, I've broken that into 5 different categories. This is the time that if you as a board member feel like there ought to be other categories or that we want to change the weights that are listed there. And I put in weights that I've seen in other requests for proposals, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be that way. We would like it to add up to 100. It just makes it easier to calculate in the end. But the request for proposal lays out a specific format that anybody that's presenting would be required to follow. Right now, we've got 10 points of the total presentation being from that. The plan of action leading to the desired outcome. And this is, so when we say plan of action leading to the desired outcome, that is whoever as a board, we choose to have a look at this. If you want a committee to look at that, if you want it just to be the board, they would then score that out of 35 points based on their view of that proposal creating our desired outcome. Past performance, experience and expertise, and then the proposed budget are the categories that we got there. So those are, we can adjust those, we can adjust the weights if you as a board feel like you'd like to do that. But what we do need to have to be able to do is at the end, based on the scoring of the rubric, which would be part of the public record, we would have to award the contract to the highest scoring group based on the rubric. So you couldn't have one group say that they come out with the best score, but then, well, we really like their plan of action and we want them to, a different group to get awarded the contract.
But it's still pretty subjective.
It's going to be subjective based on your your interpretation and scoring.
Right.
And it allows for that.
Yeah.
So we would get copies of
Yes.
what their past performance, their plan of
They-
action.
They will present all of that in something that is delivered to you as a board.
Okay. Is that going to be like, I mean, I looked at the timeline.
Yeah, we'd be looking at posting this within this week, and then they'd have 30 days from now. We would report on that at our next board meeting with, essentially a decision of who's going to meet, when we're going to meet to make our scorings.
So this takes out the lowest cost.
Yes.
as a factor.
Well, the lowest cost might be in there because of the proposed budget is still 15% of the whole total. But it's not the only thing.
Right, we're not tied to that.
Correct. And as a board, the way the RFP is written, you have the right at any point, as all these come in and you're not satisfied with any of them, you could just say, we're not gonna do any of those. That's still within your right as a board. Any concerns or questions or corrections you'd like to make to the rubric or the request for proposal?
No, sorry, I'm not answering your question.
That's all right. So this will require an action item at the end. So, did you have a question on
I'm
another?
just curious if how administrators have, or teachers, if you've gotten any input on.
The only
This-
thing that I've heard back is a feeling that at least they're trying to do something to keep us protected. That's been the phrase that's come back.
Are parents, yay or nay?
I have not received any.
I live by Purple Sage, and when Sandy Hook happened, those thoughts, Purple Sage is isolated up there.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it.
And
I'm not a gun person, so I'm okay with it.
Okay.
any others?
Okay.
I guess that would be my own personal. All right, let's move on to discussion item E, supplemental levy planning.
All right, so just wanted to call your attention to the supplemental levy election timeline. What we would be looking for is on the 14th at the regular board meeting, we'd present and review the language that would go with that supplemental levy. Presentation of the wording and reporting requirements. We would give it that meeting as well. We have time. You, as a board, we could finalize in August, but we also have time before the ballot deadline on the 11th of September at our regular board meeting to finalize. So if you feel comfortable with how the wording is in August, we could finalize then and get it into the county. If not, and you want to tweak and take some time on that, we have some time to do that in September. The deadline for that to get in on the ballot is the 18th of September. So we would have to make sure that whatever we did, we had it in by the 18th. And then on the 11th, or if you chose to approve in August through the 7th, we communicate to the stakeholders how we've done it in the past through the website. Newsletter in October the hard copy newsletter that goes out to all homes would go out with info on the levy. We'd have a minimum 3 live community information opportunities. We can do more if we feel like that's needed. Social media posts, and then we move towards election day on November 7th to try and get that supplemental levy passed. Any concerns?
No, I think that we're just gonna have the campaign for helping people understand the need for it is gonna be, we're gonna have to be very careful in how we word it so that they understand what's going on.
Right.
I think, there's the misnomer that, the legislation, that they passed that dumped all the money in the schools. Well, that's not this, it's different money. We can't use that money here because we still have a debt load on the high school. So,
But the savings is effectively the same because it's gonna be applied to the bond. And so they'll pay that much less on the bond. It's as if you didn't have to pay for the levy.
Right.
Because it'll be about the same amount.
It's just getting that, I agree with you.
Yep. Getting that information out.
Getting it out and hopefully they
Right.
understand.
So if you're comfortable with that timeline, that's how we'll proceed and we'll get ready for August to give you. The goal for me would be August to have all the information in your hands so that if you were comfortable with it, you could pass it then. But if there's things that you need to look at, we'll do it in September.
Great. All right, let's move on to F. RFQ for criteria discussion on facilities design and construction management.
Okay, on this one, I just wanted to give the board the opportunity to share any discussion you might have regarding what criteria you'd like me to start putting as I start working on the request for qualifications for the design, request for qualifications for the construction management, that if there's anything you'd like me to make sure and include within that you share that with me so that we can, so that I can start putting that request for qualifications together. We'd be looking at that more towards September, October to put that out. But just, I think it's a good opportunity to talk design of our building. Are we looking for the kind of elementary school that we've been looking at? Are we looking to make adjustments to our thought process on that? Are we looking to reduce, is it find a way to reduce the cost regardless of what the longevity of that, you put a lot of money into a building, you expect it to last, 40, 50 years at least. If you put less in, are you going to have to look at it? Is it going to last a shorter amount of time? And is that worth that trade-off? From the design perspective, those are some of the things. From the construction management, are there concerns with how anything that you've heard from your patrons, constituents, regarding how the previous construction process was handled? Are there things that we want to make sure are a part of our conversation as we move forward? So I'll just open that up to.
As part of it, I don't imagine we can hand them something and say, give us a good, better, best option. So do 3 designs, right? They're not going to do that. That's a lot of work. Is there the opportunity to have maybe 1 or 2 present to us and say, here are some options, as far as building styles, so metal, tilt up, and
typically if whatever their experience has been, they're going to give you what they've done previously. So let's say that a school has built a charter school that was on a tighter budget. A company has built a charter school on a tighter budget, as well as a large high school for a traditional public school. They're going to show you both of that as they lay out their portfolio. Their portfolio is going to be quite extensive because they want to show you, we've got all of this. And if we say we want to make sure that, everybody's going to be looking for the most economical way to build a building. But
right.
If we were saying we're looking to scale down the building so that we don't have as high a price, that would be, I'd write it out differently, but that'd be something that we place in there so that when they're putting their portfolio together, they can show us those kind of things.
If it's 20 million versus 25 million and the difference is 20 years, duh, right? And that's
Right.
okay, well, that makes that worth it. So it's just kind of figuring out the return on investment of those things. What are we looking at? It's kind of tough for us because we have to do some future planning. If the mayor keeps shoehorning houses in, where do we go next? What's the next phases? We have to think a little bit about what our current population of students are and future build for our immediate needs, and what's going to keep building 10 years from now, right? When the economy adjusts, maybe it comes back, and all of a sudden things really start firing back up.
Well, and that leads to one aspect of the RFQ that would be, are we talking about just one school, or are we talking about, let's have you be our designer for any buildings that come in the next 10 to 15 years? You could make both of those cases as part of the RFQ, and you can limit it or have that larger scope.
But is there an advantage to that? Do we get like a 2-for-1 deal, right? Or is
Well, I
it-
think that's going to be up to those companies to share that with us. If we say this is where we'd like to, this is the scope that we are willing to consider.
Well, what I would like to see in the actual proposal is just at least an articulation of, this is why it is 25 instead of 20 million, because the value would be so much further ahead. Because people are always like, can't we just build it cheaper? But if they understand the reason that it costs a certain amount is because this is the best value. And a lot of it's just a matter of putting it out there. Because, that's what we heard at those building meetings. People are like, can't we just build, I don't know what they envisioned, some like metal shop, I don't, it cost me 200,000. Why can't we just build a school like this, but they didn't understand, just like these modules that cost $250,000. We don't know why they cost so much more than a double wide when they don't have plumbing or anything in it. But, they have to have conduiting, they have to have these other things that the government buildings have to have, and they have to, the life expectancy, articulating that, just like our community center that was built, what did we say it was built, 1928 to 29, so it's approaching 100 years, so that easily could be the life of some of these buildings,
Yeah.
By the way, I think since our last meeting, close to 1,300 lots were approved, does that sound right?
Yeah.
In the vicinity, there's
At the Canyon County one.
Canyon.
just
No, just
Middleton.
and both sides of Middleton Road up here, yeah.
So it's,
Is that county or city?
No, well, it's county, but
I think it's
district.
county.
It's in the impact
And I
zone
think
of the-
there's
of the
issues
city.
right now with irrigation.
so they'll end up being in the city.
Yeah, it'll
They'll be in
eventually
us.
be in
Yes.
the city, yeah, all within a mile or two of your place, so,
Lovely.
yeah. But yeah, just unbelievable potential, I guess, growth. It's crazy to think of them building that many houses, but yeah.
Anything else you'd like me to make sure and
What
consider?
are some of the traditional things, like what would you currently write into it? Like what are,
Well, typically what you'll put in there is let's talk design. You're going to talk about lead up to a bond, the types of things that you would be provided to the school district in the lead up to the bond. You'd have agreements about how the cost will be handled if the bond doesn't pass. If the bond does pass, you'll have those kind of things articulated. You'll talk about the scope of current projects. So if you were going to talk about an elementary school, you might say we want an elementary school that will house 700 students, 600 students, whatever it is that you decide. Those kind of specifics would be included in the design portion. In the construction management portion, what you're going to be looking at is a lot more about the qualifications and the past. You're going to concentrate a lot on their past work. What is it, if we were to have you come and manage our construction, what's the experience you've had with other schools? And maybe you want to have, what experience have you had with charter schools? Just because you know that if they've been working with charter schools, they've had to adjust based on a different type of funding stream than traditional schools might have. You could add that kind of a line in there, but you're really looking for them to share with you what successes they've had in terms of helping schools design. Because when you do it this way, the construction manager is working together with the designer and the school district. You're all working together prior to the bond going forward. In the traditional model process, you're gonna do all of that, and then you're gonna hire a general contractor who's going to, take what you've handed them, rather than what we're talking about here, where we'll all be working together from the beginning so we can identify some of those issues that might come forward. So it's identifying somebody that you feel like is going to have that kind of background and that can work with the school district. Because you're not gonna be talking cost at all. You're gonna, after you consider the qualifications and you choose somebody based on those qualifications, you'll have a contract negotiation, which if you can't come to an agreement on a contract after that, then you can let that person go and you go to the next person on your list.
But ultimately, part of the idea is that when there is an actual bond election, then we have something, an actual school in mind, instead
Yes.
of this is some sort of vague concept.
Correct. Correct, and they would be, and we would articulate how that, we wouldn't be giving dates for the bond yet. We would just say, when we choose to go for a bond, at least this many months prior, we would have a rendering with, and we would want whatever level of design we want to have, whether that's full blueprints or just a floor plan, however we want to put that.
Well, and sometimes past experience would be that they would show you a school they've already built.
Correct,
And be able to go visit it.
correct.
As a,
They would absolutely provide that kind of,
so you can kind of
visualize it.
visualize what it would look like. And I know we've done that.
Yep, we've done that with Design West and Benetton,
Right.
as we've looked at some of the schools.
My interest really would be in looking at these people based on their qualifications, providing value. Not necessarily price, not necessarily budget, but like value, as in I'm using my thunker and, I recommend this because, and just justify the money we're paying. And that was pretty hard with our last stuff because it really was, hey, we've done it before. There's the other school like that. We're going to do it again. And it's this much money. Help me understand if you're going to design this, help me understand the learning space and if things are shifting in technology and the way people are teaching and, concerns for safety. What does that all look like? Because you're right. I don't want to just build another metal barn, right? And then stuff a bunch of kids in there. That's not going to work. We need to kind of figure it out. But I also don't want to go over the top where, I'm looking at things built in California and they have to have permeable concrete, this and that, and solar and all these crazy, well, you know what? Let's just build a really smart building that gives us the best bang for our buck. It's going to last long enough. We're not spending a bunch of extra stuff on frou-frou right now. We got to get a good looking school in for these kids. Do we need granite for flooring? No, you can do polished concrete. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's different aspects of this. I want people to be able to come to the table with and not just go, here's some of our designs, pick the one you like, that's coolest. I want to understand why we would present to our community to build a school that's going to be millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, and know that they can look at it and go, that's money well spent. They didn't just take our tax money and or pass this thing and go, let's party.
Yeah.
And showing that there's sensible options for each part of the structure and how they can present that.
And that's really it. That's my main. However that works out between the builder and the designer, I don't care. I'd like to see a range of, hey, this is working great for some of these places in different parts of the state, the country, whatever. And here's our options.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you.
Yeah, you translate
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, I'll get it. I'll get
He
it done.
will. All right, let's go on to policy review, policy 2240, class size.
There've been no changes since the last board meeting. I would recommend moving this to policy.
I would entertain a motion for that.
Move that we, you send you on practice.
I move that we look at policy 2240, class size, and put it into
Adoption.
adoption.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Third reading,
Yep, go ahead.
open enrollment, we've got those two policies. The only thing that we've changed is we've adjusted the special education numbers. Worked with Whitney, in creating those. Those are in line with what we've got currently.
Okay.
And what you'll see there is there's a statement, let me just bring that up, sorry. Thought I had it up already. There's a statement there that talks about the, how those numbers can be adjusted based on the numbers of aides in the room.
Okay.
Bring that up.
For determining maximum.
Yeah, there's a PR. This is the 310 PR one.
Max, okay.
Okay, so on that special education caseload, you'll see some limits based on availability of teacher assistants. Additional assistants may accommodate greater numbers. What that essentially is saying, those numbers are based on current or less. You know, so let's say a resource room with 30, maybe that's based on having one aide in the room. What these numbers are based on is what we currently have or less, meaning we might have fewer, but we won't ever break through that. That it's not safe for that teacher to be a part of that. But these are for our overload numbers that we would use to say, if it goes over this, we can't have more students that are a student that's coming into the district from out of district with those special needs, just because we don't have the services to be able to provide it.
Just curious how many have joined us since July 1.
We
Yeah.
haven't done any, yeah, we just held off till
I
this
just
was
want to cry a little
finalized.
bit.
We've held off till this was finalized. So we've got about 15 right now that are sitting in the district office waiting, but there are others that have been making their applications directly to the schools. So we'll
Oh,
Oh, yes. Be prepared.
we'll sort through those as we come. But right now, we've just got about 15 that are just waiting in the queue, but a lot have waited to not turn anything in, knowing that something was coming. So we'll just see, we'll give you an update each month, how we're doing there.
Thank you.
okay.
Any
So,
questions on that?
So in August, you'll be able to tell us.
Probably
probably not until September.
I can give you preliminary because we will have had registration by that time,
Well,
but I won't be able to tell you it's exactly this many.
okay, but can principals kind of give us an
Yes.
idea of?
Yes, I can give you a pretty good idea
Okay,
in our August meeting.
okay.
Because it'll be that first day of school, and so we'll have been able to see who showed up that first day.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
So we need to move this to
These,
policy.
both of those need to be moved to policy.
I make a motion that we approve and adopt policy 3010 open enrollment and policy 3010 PR1 open enrollment. Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Without a lot of grumbling.
Yeah.
That's kept inside.
All right, let's move on to action items. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the school handbooks.
I move that we approve the school handbooks that have been presented by the elementaries.
Well, these are
and
the,
Middle and high.
because the other two
Heights.
elementaries we did last.
Middle
Right.
school.
So it's
Okay,
just
by the
high
heights.
school, middle
High
school, and
school.
heights.
High school, middle school, and heights.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Possible action item B, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny security plan RFP.
I move that we approve the security plan RFP.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. I would entertain a motion for someone to read number 10.
I move that we move into executive session as per section 74-2061B of Idaho Code to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent.
Second.
Thank you. We need to go in by roll call.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Dempsey,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes,
trustee Powell,
Yes.
trustee Clark,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
Is it off?